Can your smartphone really help you identify wildlife? Or are nature apps just digital guesswork dressed up with Latin names and flashy confidence scores? Have you been out on a walk and thought, I'd love to know what that is? Well, good news, there's an app for that, or three. I'm going to be putting some of the most popular nature apps to the test, covering birds, bats, flowers, and even insects. Basically, if it flies, flaps, or grows, I'm going to be pointing my mobile at it. I'm David Winnard, naturalist and wildlife educator, and I've been learning about species identification since I was 5 via my grandma. And for the last 20 years, I've been fortunate enough to be teaching wildlife identification to thousands of members of the public, as well as senior ecologists. But one question keeps cropping up: are these nature apps any good? I'll be sharing the pros, cons, and misfires with these apps, which ones get it right, which ones are a bit more hit and miss, and asking the question, can any of these apps really compete with a trained naturalist? Is this about replacing field skills? Or is it more about the fact that your mobile phone might be able to help you build them? Let's see what happens when modern tech meets wildlife identification. When I asked on social media what wildlife apps people were using, there was one that came up time and time again. Merlin. Many of you said you rely on it to identify birds by sound, so naturally I'm going to be out in the field testing it in a variety of habitats to see how good it is. It's 5 a.m. and I'm over on a marsh over on Anglesey, and even though it's a bit chilly, the birds are putting on a fabulous display because this is the dawn chorus, Britain's original surround sound. So let's fire up Merlin and see exactly what we're listening to. So for those of you that have never used this app before, this is a free app and it's made by Cornell University. And in live time, it tells me exactly what I'm listening to. It's flagging up now with, I can hear wren, Chetty's warbler, there's a distant blackcap then. And it's showing me on screen exactly what's what. And I've brought it to the wetland to start with because there's a lot of overlapping birdsong. Lots of varieties of water birds and warblers. So you're putting it through its paces, and so far, it's not missing a beat. It's got picking up everything I can hear. The app's picking up as well. Sedge warbler. It can pick up those distant grey-lag geese flying over. So far, I'm impressed. I've been using it for half hour or so, and at the moment, I've not had any kind of weird things crop up or anything like that. Everything I've heard, it's picked up. Bittern. Oh, it's picking that up fantastically. Bittern's probably the pride and joy of any reedbed. That deep booming call that you can hear. You almost feel it in your stomach before you hear it with your ears, and it's picked up that no problem. Generally, with phones, the very higher ends of sound and the very lower ends, they can struggle a bit, but it seemed to be absolutely perfect with that. So far this morning, in a very challenging conditions that I thought it would struggle with and throw up some weird anomalies, it's doing really, really well, which is great. But the day is young. Let's see where else we can take it and what else we can listen to, and see if we can put it through its paces. There's a stone chat perched just in front of me, so I'm going to fire up Merlin and see if it can pick up exactly what I can hear. And it's giving me a live recording now. It can hear the sedge warbler, which is quite a few singing around, so that's no surprise. I can hear wren, which is just picked up. It's picking up the Canada geese, but it's not, and the chiff chaff, but it's not picking up the stone chat, which is right in front of me. It's not far away. It's doing its kind of chat, chat kind of call. It's picking up all sorts of other things, but not the bird in front of me. So I think this might be the first miss of the day. It's not a misidentification. It's just missed it entirely. And if you look down the list of birds, you'd think it was going to be one of those. So if you didn't know your bird song, this is where it might trip you up, because you'd be adamant it's one of these things that it's listing, but actually the thing that's making the noise is not even on this list. So yeah, first miss of the day. I've been really surprised at how well Merlin has worked in such a kind of harsh environment for the app, because it's got lots of sounds going on. It's got the drone of a major road just in the distance, as well as lots of birds going on, and it's handled it really well. It's only made one error in that it didn't pick up the stone chat. The rest of the time it's been pretty accurate. But now it's time to move on and see how well it does in a woodland setting. Playing with the app now for about an hour in this beautiful woodland, and for the vast majority of things it's done really, really well. It's recorded most of the things that I've heard, and pretty much at the same time as well. It's done really well for chiffchaff, blackcap, pied flycatcher, and especially wood warbler, my favourite bird of spring. Its song sounds like you're spinning a coin on a table, and as it's slowing down and kind of getting ready to go flat, it gets quicker and quicker, and then stops. That's how I always remember wood warbler. But it has missed all of the crossbill flying over. It's also missed spotted flycatcher at point blank range. I was photographing and filming them, and it never picked them up. Even though they do have quite a soft muted call, I still would have expected it to have picked it up. And I think that with the stone chat, we're starting to see more things it's missing as opposed to misidentifications. But I am interested now in how far can we push this app? When will it start making errors? When will it start making misidentifications? And how far can we push it? And I think the best place to do that is probably in my garden. I shall see you there. Time for a brew and a sit down in the garden and listen to what birds the app can pick up. So I'm going to start Merlin running, and what you've got to bear in mind is that there's going to be noises in this urban setting. There's a major A road just down the road, there's a big main road here, there's a train track, there's playground, there's lots going on, and already it's made a mistake. It's been hearing the house sparrows, but it's also picked up a reed bunting, which is very, very unlikely here. It's picking up the blackbird, so it's already made a mistake, and I'm not surprised. Okay. It's made another mistake in that it's hearing the young jackdaws that are nesting in a chimney just up there, and it's thought moorhen. and it's definitely not moorhen. But I can understand why it's thought moorhen, because when the chicks are calling and things, they do sound a bit like a moorhen, but it's echoing about against all the kind of the terraced houses around here. And this is where we're starting to see the limitations of this app. And one of the reasons for doing this test is to illustrate how in extreme circumstances, and this is extreme, there's a lot of ambient noise going on. Like I say, from road, train, aircraft going over, there's an airport just down the road, and just the echoing about as well. So it's picking up, the house sparrow and the blackbird, but suggesting moorhen that's a big no-no. It suggested moorhen and not jackdaw, which I can see the jackdaw in the chimney, and now it suggested pheasant, which again, it must be the jackdaw throwing it off, and it's getting confused. This is where the limitations of this app come in, and I mean, there's a lesser black-backed gull flying over, at roof head. You can clearly see the call on the sonogram, and yet it hasn't picked it up. So all the extra noise going on around it, it has picked up the goldfinch though. That's quite good. It's distorting the sound recording, and from that the app is then struggling because it's not got a very clear. When we're in the woods, when we're in the wetland, and you've got clear sound of what these birds are, that's where the app excels. That's where it's at its best. And it's now suggested white wagtail, which is, that's the nail in the coffin. It's got half of the things on this list wrong. But again, not surprising really, considering the extreme circumstances. So in this situation, the app has struggled, and we're starting to see the limitations of it. Okay, a slight addendum to what I've just filmed and what you've just seen, because I was packing away and I thought I'll just get a few more samples and things like that, some bit more footage of the phone recording things, and it flagged up little ring plover. Now, that's almost unlikely here, and I kind of thought, this is just another example of how it's getting things wrong. And then a few seconds later, I hear it with my ear flying past, and it flags up again, clear signature of it on the sonogram. And there's no doubt that was a little ring plover. When I heard it with my ear, I was like, yeah, it is. But if I wasn't thinking little ring plover, I probably would have thought, oh, that was a bit weird. And by the time I thought that, it's disappeared because it was obviously flying past. And that's the beauty of Merlin, is it's like having a bird-watching friend in your pocket that just doesn't sleep. It's always doing stuff. And importantly, it's not just listing the species that it thinks is the best suggestion of what it's hearing. It's got the sonogram, the visual representation of these notes and songs that these birds are singing and calling. And I can look at that and go, yeah, that is definitely the signature call of a little ring plover, which it is. So this is I'm ecstatic, because it's such a nice bird to get over the garden, etc. And it's thanks to the app. If I wasn't doing this, I would have probably gone, another day I might have got that. But yeah. So let's go and round up the pros and cons, the limitations, and is this app worth installing on your phone? I'll see you in a minute. I've come to one of my favourite grasslands to sum up my experience of using Merlin in the last week or so, and I have been using it quite solidly. And you've seen some of the cases, but also on some events with members of the general public and even some experienced bird watchers. I've been using Merlin to see what different people's opinions are, and it can be a bit divisive in the birding communities. Some experienced bird watchers seem a bit more reluctant to embrace Merlin, and the general public just generally love it. And honestly, what's not to love about Merlin? I'll go on to more of the pros about it. Let's talk about the cons, though. It does misidentify certain things, and we've gone through the reasons for why that can be. And sometimes just certain species in the database are more represented than others. If it's very common, it's far more likely to be well documented on the database, so there's a lot, far more likely to be accurate compared to something rare. And also, Merlin is an American app, and even though you can upload bird calls and songs from all over the world, it is, slightly biased, but in the UK, it's. I think it's really, really good and mostly accurate. It has, like, we went through the misidentifications, and it has missed a few things, which is slightly frustrating. And the other problem with Merlin is if people are just using it and getting, it suggests all these things from the garden, and they upload their data, which you can do to places like eBird. That's where you start getting misidentifications going through into national databases and starts affecting the quality of the data and things like that. So if you use that function on Merlin, only upload stuff you're 100% sure you know what it is. So those are the kind of the cons of it. Let's talk about the pros. It's free. It's a highly powerful tool for no money, and it's in your pocket at all times. So if you hear something and you're unsure, it's like having a bird watching companion out in the field with you all hours of the day. And Graham on Facebook summed it up perfectly, which is, you don't take this as gospel, you take it as the start of an investigation. Even Merlin says this is the best suggestion, and this is the start of your inquiry. And you can play around. You can listen to some of its suggestions and go, "Yeah, I do think that is a blackbird. I do." Or you can listen to it and go, "No, I don't agree with that." And that's when you can start reading around it. And that's important with all of these apps we'll discuss. It's not just the case of going, "Oh, that's that great. Get on with my day." It's understanding why these apps are suggesting these things. So if it says, "I think this is a blackcap," try and understand why it's suggesting that. Read up on what blackcaps sound like, or listen to some sound recordings and go, I agree. And build up your knowledge that way. What's also been surprising is the amount of people in the last week who've come up to me and said, you might be struggling with hearing, you're hard of hearing, old age, or, for whatever reason, got hearing issues, and said that when you've been out in the field, you have been playing Merlin, and it suggested things that you can't hear. And on the back of that, you've then known to look for those birds. And that's a real eye-opener to someone like me, because it's something I wasn't really thinking about. But some of you are seeing birds that you otherwise wouldn't have seen because of Merlin. That is only a good thing. It's making it accessible to more and more bird watchers. And I just think it's a fantastic app. Yes, it does get things wrong. Just yesterday, I was trying it out on a song thrush, and it mimicked a nuthatch. And Merlin came up saying nuthatch. And you kind of think, oh, it's got it wrong. But it's like, well, has it got it wrong? The song thrush is doing a really good nuthatch impression, so why is it surprising that it suggested nuthatch, because it's literally mimicking it. And some birds do that, starling as well. And when you're a bit more experienced, you're aware of those things, but that only comes with experience. When I started off, it was on cassettes and CDs, and I was listening to them over and over again to try and learn these things, and I think there is a bit of envy and jealousy with the older bird watchers, where the new generation of bird watchers coming through have all that information right on their phone, and you can become very well versed in birdsong very quickly using Merlin. You can learn a lot, for no money in a short amount of time. It's fantastic. I honestly thought when I started reviewing Merlin, I thought I'd be sitting on the fence with how good it is. I thought, I'd be saying it's got some good points and a lot of bad points. It has got a few bad points, and I think in a few years they'll get ironed out even more. It's overwhelmingly an amazing tool. It's free. If you haven't got it downloaded on your mobile, I strongly suggest downloading it, checking it out, give it a week, try it out in a different situation, see what you think. And, are you a Merlin lover, or do you think it's, far more inaccurate than what I got? I'd love to know. Let me know down in the comments. But yeah, I highly recommend downloading Merlin. I'm a big, big supporter of it. I think it's fantastic. Well worth putting on your mobile. Now, when it came to identifying plants, there were lots of suggestions for apps, so thank you for that. But I'm going to take 4. I'm going to take PlantNet, Flora Incognita, Seek, and ObsIdentify. And I'm going to test them against 100 species of wildflower. 100 because it means I'm going to have to go to coastal areas, arable farmland, woodlands, and maybe even urban settings to find these plants. But it also means it makes my life very easy for working out their accuracy at the end of this test. Don't worry, I'm not going to show you every single 100 plant and how well they do. I'm going to do a bit of a montage, but go through each of the apps and the pros and cons and how they work and see which one comes out on top. I genuinely have no idea, so I'm really looking forward to starting this test. And when I do the test, it's going to be quite standard in that I'm going to use my mobile phone, just to get some snappy snaps. But the images I get, I will use the same image on each of the apps, so they've got the same thing to work from. And I might use my main camera, my digital SLR with a macro lens, see how well it does with that as well. But again, always the same image. So they've always got standard things to work from. So yeah, plant identification and apps. Let's see how well they do. Let's get started. Before we delve into all the different plant apps we're going to be looking at, a little tip. If you are wanting to photograph a plant for identification, the best thing you can do is create flat light. And often when people send me images to identify, it's in the middle of the day, it's glorious, like today, glorious blue skies, it's fantastic. But for identification, you don't want high contrasting images. You don't want very bright spots and really dark spots. You want a nice even light over the image. So what I usually hope for when I'm out photographing are those kind of bright sunny days with really high white cloud. It just acts like a softbox and just lights everything nice and evenly. On days like today, you just create lots of shadows. So take, for instance, this rock rose down here. I'm using my shadow to just get in close and photograph the rock rose, because then it's nice even light. When it's in full sun, you've got highlights and deep shadows and things like that. The apps, they prefer working with things that are uniform in light. So if you can cast your own shadow when you're taking a picture of a plant, do that. With other things like insects, don't do that, because the chances are as soon as you cast your shadow over what is you're photographing, they're going to fly off. So in the case of flowers, it's well worth just casting your shadow and taking a uniform light picture in that respect. But yeah, let's go and talk about our first app, which is going to be PlantNet. Let's start looking at some of the apps and starting with PlantNet. And I'm about 75% of the way through this little test of mine. And I've got to say that PlantNet is the app that I go to first. I really enjoy using it. Its user interface is really straightforward, basic to use. It appeals to me. I also really like the way that this is a serious plant app, so I can upload multiple images, up to 9 images, one of the flower, one of the leaf, one of the seeds. I could do, multiple shots of the same thing if I wanted to. And it allows you to tell it what you're taking a picture of, whether it's the leaf or whether it's the flower. And it then has far more information to base its identification off rather than just one picture. And with plants, some of them don't allow themselves to get all the detail in one picture, just because they might be incredibly tall or leggy or whatever. So it's a really, really good feature to be able to, upload a picture of the leaf, of the flower, things like that. I also like the fact that it's got a group setting. So theoretically, with Laura, my wife, I could create a group for us, and it has, an area we could cover, and basically I can upload pictures of things I've seen and things she's seeing at work or whatever, and, can keep an eye on what each other are finding. I like that. It's got other nice features as well. A couple of the drawbacks though. It doesn't work offline. So when I've been in a few areas that have got no mobile signal at all, it won't suggest anything because it doesn't load, which isn't a problem, because then I can just take the pictures, upload it when I get home, and then do it all there. but it's a little bit of a drawback. And the other thing as well is that even though it has a geographical area, the UK is classed as Northern Europe. And the trouble with that is, on a couple of occasions, it has suggested species as the top answer that do not occur in the UK. They occur just over the water, in the rest of Northern Europe, but they're not in the UK. And I can't help but feel that if these regions were a bit more refined, and we got rid of this, if it didn't suggest species that weren't in the UK, then it would be far more accurate as well. Nitpicking, but they're the drawbacks. Overwhelmingly, though, I really like PlantNet, and I'm very, very curious to know how it gets on with its accuracy score. Flora Incognita is our second plant app, and it is a plant app. It's a serious plant app like PlantNet, in that I can upload multiple images of the same plant showing flower, the whole plant, the leaf, etc., to help it identify. I'm so glad some of you suggested Flora Incognita on our social media, because it's not an app I was very aware of before this test, and I have to say, having used it, I'm really, really enjoying it. Again, very user-friendly. Big button in the centre saying identify plant. What's not to love about that? And I can upload images that I've already taken, or I can just upload images there, take pictures there and then for it to identify. And the thing I like about it is that in offline mode, so I've got no internet signal at all, I can still gather all the information, take photos, it stores them, and when you get signal, it then goes through them, which is a really nice feature. And it's got a few little niggling points compared to PlantNet. Its garden plant ID is much worse. It's being unfair. We're not, this test is not doing garden plants and things like that. It's doing wildflowers. For that, it excels. But it is noticeable how, for the garden plants, it's nowhere near as good as PlantNet. And it's slightly slower as well than PlantNet, but ever so slightly. And in this day and age where we want instant gratification, we're talking a few seconds, maybe longer in identifying something, which isn't the worst thing in the world. The other thing I really like about this app is if you click on species, it gives you a list of species in your area, and everything it's suggesting is in the area. There's nothing here where it's like, this is, really, really odd suggestion, etc. It's suggesting things which is absolutely all here. So if you're new to botany, then this is a great feature to have, because it gives you an idea of what you're going to be looking for and what to keep an eye out for. I have a feeling that Flora Incognita and PlantNet are going to excel in this test, because they're apps that they are purely for plants, and you can upload multiple images of different parts of the plant, because that's what we do when we're identifying plants. We look at the whole thing, not just one little snippet. We take a look at the leaf, the flowers, etc. And having all that information is going to make their identifications more accurate. The next two we're going to look at only use single images, so it will be interesting to see how the difference between these two, the next two, work out at the end. ObsIdentify is our third app, and unlike the other two, this is not specifically a plant app. What ObsIdentify is a generalist app, which is really, really nice. The reason I'm going to be looking at ObsIdentify and Seek, the next one, is because many of you have said these are just go-to all-round apps, and you use them for whether it's moths or butterflies and flowers. So it's interesting to compare them against designated plant apps compared to a more generalist one. I'm not as keen on the user interface with ObsIdentify. It's not as sleek and stylish, I don't think, compared to some of the others. I really like the feature, though, that, again, you can create groups like you can with Flora Incognita, but you can also set challenges, which is nice, within those groups between you all, which could become very competitive. And probably the best, I don't have that, that feature on my phone. But again, you can upload images from your mobile, you can take pictures there and then. And I have to say, it's noticeably not as accurate as the previous two apps. But whilst I've been out walking, I've identified other wildlife with it. And to compare them against just fully fledged plant apps is a little bit unfair. Where ObsIdentify and Seek come into their own is as generalists, and we'll talk about them in that respect later on in this video. But other than that, I've just taken a picture of something. I've just checked its identification. It comes up with a percentage score, which is always nice. And in this case, it says 100%, which kind of reassures you a bit. If it's suggesting it only says 12%, then you might be backing up the wrong tree. So yeah, it's again, another free app. Dead straightforward to use, might not be as stylish and as user-friendly as some of the other apps we've looked at. But yeah, again, enjoy using it, and especially as a generalist app. So Seek by iNaturalist is our final plant app we're going to look at. And again, it's a little unfair. It's not a plant app, it's a general nature app. But again, many of you use it for identifying plants, so we're having a look at it. And I've got to say, this is a really, really powerful app. It's linked to iNaturalist, which in itself is a vast resource of and community of lots of naturalists who post pictures and other people comment on them, help them identify them and things like that. It's got challenges, it's got list of observation, you can upload your data. There's a very, very powerful tool. And one of the features I really, really like is I don't even need to take a picture for it to identify something. If I just have my phone camera on, it tells me, exactly what I'm seeing. And sometimes it's a little bit vague, and it can be vague. I'll get onto that in a sec. But other times you'll just point your phone at something, and it'll tell you just on screen what it is. You don't even need to take a picture, which makes it really, really fun, because you go around going, you're looking at absolutely everything. Seek is definitely a perfect name for this app. Very user-friendly, but again, downsides, you can only use one photo for identifying stuff with. So it's much more limited compared to other plant apps. And the accuracy seems to be the worst of the four so far, in that a few things that I've uploaded for them all to identify, the other three apps have got the species 100%, and Seek's come back saying dicot, as in it recognised that it's a flower, and that's it. That's as far as it goes, which, to be fair, is not wrong. If you could upload a picture of a flower and it says it's a flower, it's not wrong. It's reluctant to say what flower. So for whatever reason, the other apps have been able to work off an image and get it absolutely spot on, and Seek struggled a bit. But it's still identified a lot of things correctly. It's very fun to play with, and again, it will come into its own as a more generalistic app, which we'll talk about. But yeah, I can see this up against, in a straight fight up against PlantNet and Flora Incognita. For plants, this is going to struggle, but it is incredibly fun to use. So with that, let's have a look at the overall results. So if, like me, you've been dying to know which one's going to come out on top, well, I can tell you, and to be honest, it's not that surprising. PlantNet has won with 93% accuracy. It only got 7 plants wrong. Flora Incognita came second, 89% accuracy. A little bit further behind, ObsIdentify with 78%, and then Seek with 65%. So there's almost a 30% accuracy difference between Seek and PlantNet when it comes to plants. And it's hardly surprising that both PlantNet and Flora Incognita are at the top of the table. They're designated plant apps, whereas ObsIdentify and Seek are more generalist. And being able to upload multiple images of leaves, of flowers, of things like that to both PlantNet and Flora Incognita make a huge difference. We can see that in their accuracy. I've really enjoyed using all 4 apps, and they all have their strengths and weaknesses, but when it comes to plants, and if you're just interested in botany, PlantNet and Flora Incognita are probably the 2 that you should download. Both are free, and I've got no doubt that if I did another 100 species, that result could be switched. It could be Flora Incognita on 93% and PlantNet on 89%. Obviously, I've chosen the first kind of 100 species I've come across, but they're pretty much, you know, neck and neck in reality, and I would trust both of them. You know, what's interesting with the results is that across the 100 species, there's 100% accuracy, in that at least one app has got every single one of those plants that I've pointed at correct. That's interesting, is that whilst individual apps are, you know, fighting over 93, 89, you know, these kind of percentages, collectively, they're at 100%. It's just, in some cases, one of them got it right and 3 didn't. But of all those species, 100 out of 100 were identified correctly by at least one app. That's interesting, and that's where you start thinking about the hive mind and not just relying on one source. In the same way, I've got books behind me on multiple subjects, and I've got shelves that you can't see just here covered in books. I don't just use one book for looking up different species. I'll use multiple sources, and when you use multiple sources, you're far more likely to get more accurate information. It's the same with these apps. You know, if you're using PlantNet and Flora Incognita and ObsIdentify, between them, you're going to be almost, you know, as correct. All you need to do is, if they differ with their opinions, read around them, and that's always important anyway. Is always read around on what these apps actually kind of suggest and whether you agree with them or not. That's the important thing, and learn why they're suggesting that, and read up more about the species. The only other thing I wanted to mention briefly was the Americanism of names creeping into our kind of culture in terms of wildlife recording. Some of the apps suggested things that the common name was something I'd never heard of, but the scientific name was the one I was looking for. And that comes with experience of knowing what those scientific names are. But if you're a beginner, learning our plants with American names, that could get very confusing. So be aware of where these apps are based, if they're American, if they're using American names or international names. You know, I love foxglove, wood anemone, dandelion. These names are, you know, standard vocabulary for botanists in the UK. We, you know, bringing in Americanisms causes all sorts of problems, because what the common name they might use for one species might not be what we use for another, and they might have a name for one species and we use the exact same name for a different species. So then when we're using that same name, we're talking about 2 totally different species. So it can get confusing. Hopefully something that could be standardized in the future, but something to be aware of. I thoroughly enjoyed testing all of these apps, and even Seek, even though it's not as accurate as the others, it's very fun to play with the live feed, kind of identifying things without even taking a picture. Really enjoyed that. And Seek and ObsIdentify more generalist anyway. So I've really enjoyed it. But if you only want to have a couple of plant apps on your phone, it's got to be Flora Incognita and definitely PlantNet. Now, if you're like me and you like your nocturnal wildlife, just as an owl hoots there, and especially your bats, there is an app for you. Echometer Touch 2. This is an app that's designed to listen to bats in real time and suggest identifications based on what it can hear. In a similar way that Merlin works with birds, this is the bat equivalent. And I'm going to be out, hopefully, discovering what bats are in this wood and in my garden. I've downloaded the app, it's free. However, you need a microphone that can listen to bats and plug into your phone. And that comes at a cost. To be precise, this little red box here, the Echo Meter Touch 2, that's about £175 in the UK. The Pro version, that's almost double. But you need that to be able to listen to the bats. So I'm going to be out all night finding out, is it worth it? So I've just been walking through the wood and come out into a bit of an open area. And as I did, I could see bats silhouetted against the very faint glowy blue of the sky. And I tried getting some footage, but you'll have to forgive me. I don't have camera gear that's optimized for low light photography to capture bats. I tried something on my mobile phone and maybe it worked. You'll have to see. But it's told me what it thinks it is. You know, it's come up saying common pipistrelle and soprano pipistrelle. And in a similar way to Merlin, I can look at the spectrogram, I can look at the signature notes that the bats are making, the frequency they're calling at, because different species of bat call at different frequencies, and I can say, yeah, I think it's that, or no, you know, I think it's something else. It suggests based on what it thinks, and then it's down to human interpretation of how it works. But I'm absolutely loving the fact that it's getting pretty much pitch black now, and if you didn't have this app, you wouldn't think there was anything flying around. Yet the app's telling me there's loads of things flying over me, probably picking up the mosquitoes and midges that are eating me alive. So I hope you appreciate me being out in the middle of the night doing this. But yeah, I think so far I'm really enjoying it. You know, the review is going to be similar to Merlin in that use it appropriately. It's got limitations. But considering how small the microphone is, how easy it is to plug into your mobile phone, I think this is a valuable piece of kit. And I know it comes with a big price tag, but so far I'm really enjoying it. Being able to put names to some of the bats I see is quite enjoyable. And in reality, this is about 17 species of bat in the UK, 12 of which are in my area. And half of them are very rare in our area. So you'd have to go specifically looking for them. Generally, you know, I'm recording pipistrelles, Daubenton, noctual, brown long-eared bat, and those 5 are pretty much what I would expect in many of the areas I visit, with pipistrelles being by far the commonest. But it's nice to be able to confirm that using the app because, you know, it's in my pocket. I don't have to carry around, you know, huge microphones and things like that. I just plug it in, away we go, and I can look at the spectrogram and go, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree with that. So yeah, in this situation, it's really, really good. But I'm going to drive home shortly, sit out in the garden with a cup of tea, and see how it does in the garden. Oh, apologies. Apologies for a number of reasons. I'm probably very bleary-eyed. It's middle of the night. And I've just got back from the woodland. I've got my cup of tea, but I'm sat in front of the moth trap, which is what all this kind of weird light is, and it might be strobing, so apologies for that. And I've got my thoughts together on the echo meter. I've got it kind of on now, hoping to try and catch a few things, but it's a bit quiet now. Usually I've been getting quite a few pipistrelles around the house, but tonight they're not playing ball as much. There's not really much to say about it, other than it's fantastic. It really is. For a small little thing that plugs into your mobile phone, it really opens up a whole new world of wildlife. And if you're interested in bats, it is pricey, but you're not going to regret it. You will get hours and hours of fun out of it. And we can talk about the accuracy of this auto ID feature, you know, working similar to Merlin, where it suggests what it can hear. People say it's about 80% accurate, and I bow to superior knowledge at that point, but from what I've used it, I'd say that's probably about right. It's a few times it suggests things and it's like, it's not that. But again, it's a bit like Merlin. There's all sorts of factors, echolocations bouncing off walls and things like that. But more often than not, I don't use that feature anyway on the app. The power of the app is the fact that it records all frequencies. So if a bat's flying around calling at 20,000 kilohertz, or if there's one calling at 40,000 or one calling at 90,000, I can see all of them at the same time. Previously, when I've had bat detectors, the heterodyne detectors, you have to tune into each frequency to kind of hear a bat. So you kind of go out targeting certain species, etc., or have a number of bat detectors all at different frequencies, and that was just, and they're all doing white noise kind of stuff. This, you can still do that. You can set the app to be all frequency, or whether you tune it in or not. So it gives you the option. But when you get used to hearing pipistrelle calls or brown long-eared bat or nocturnal bat, you just are able to recognise either the sound or the pattern, or just the note, the signature of each of the calls and things like that. So very, very quickly, it enables you to learn about these things, which is what it's all about at the end of the day. I think it's fantastic. There's not much more to go on about. It's a fabulous bit of kit. It's got endless kind of features. It's got GPS. It kind of works out where the bats are actually calling from and going and things like that, and pulls up a map and shows you. And this is just the light version. You can get the pro version, which is an even better microphone. Yeah, it is pricey, and it's the only app we're reviewing where a cost is involved. But it's such a specialist piece of equipment, and it plugs into your phone, carry it around with you. It's dead easy to use. It's endless fun. It's opened up all sorts of avenues for me in terms of learning about bats in my local area. So I highly recommend it if you can afford it. But on that note, I'm going to go to bed, because in the morning we're going to empty that moth trap out and try some of the other apps at some of the insects that are in the trap. Good night. Good morning. It was a good night for moths. I had about nearly 40 species of moth, which is quite nice. And this morning, it's been nice to film and photograph them as I've been unloading the moth trap, and before they all fly off, because it's nice flat light, like we were talking about with the plants. So it's nice even light for getting images, etc. And I've been trying out 3 apps. I've been trying ObsIdentify, Seek, and Google Lens. Now, Google Lens is not a nature app in itself. It's just Google's application where you can just take a picture or upload a picture, and it looks through Google Images and goes, it looks like this. And you could upload a bird, you could upload a moth, you could upload a picture of a sofa or a car, and it says, oh, I think it's this kind of car, or I think this is where you can buy this sofa from. So interesting to see how that works. And I have to say, with obvious things, I've had a trio of hawk moths, lime, poplar, and elephant, very iconic moths. These apps have all performed well. But then Seek has really underperformed. It's only got about 60% of the moths accurately identified. Google Lens got 75%, and ObsIdentify 100. That's how good ObsIdentify is. I'm really, really shocked that it got all of them. There was a few tricky little moths, because although I've had some iconic moths, I've been trying to get through the small brown nondescript moths, because that's going to really put these to the test. And ObsIdentify's done really well with those as well. So I'm very impressed with ObsIdentify. Seek has left me very frustrated. And it's left me frustrated because I really like this app. I think it's sleek. I think it's stylish. I think it's got great features. I think it's got a wonderful community in iNaturalist and things like that. And yet it's constantly got things wrong that even Google Lens didn't get wrong. And that's not a nature app. And then even trying it on some of the insects in the garden. So there's a 22-spot ladybird on one of the plants behind me. And ObsIdentify comes up straight away, 100%, 22-spot ladybird. Google Lens comes up saying, I think it's a 22-spot ladybird. What do you think? And Seek doesn't even recognize it as anything. not even an insect. And that's really frustrating. There's a number of times now this morning when I've been using Seek, and with clear images, it just doesn't recognize it as anything. It doesn't even know where to start. And that's really, really frustrating. And I can see people getting frustrated with it. I can see the app making mistakes and that frustrating other people. So yeah, I think I did wonder whether I would find an app in these reviews that I just wouldn't like. And annoyingly, Seek's probably it, but I do like it. It's just not very accurate, in my opinion. From my tests, over the last kind of 10 days or so, working with plants, working with moths and insects and things like that with Seek, it just has not performed at all. Google Lens outperforms it, and that's not even a nature app. So it's less me frustrating. However, it is good to know that apps like ObsIdentify, that's excelled. That's performed really well and shows it can be very, very accurate. And again, in terms of moths, I think it's 38 this morning, species that I've had. It's got all those right. And that's a small sample size, let's be realistic. But it has got them all right. This morning, anything I've just needed a second opinion on, with little small brown moths, it's come up and it's like, I think it's this. And then when I click and read up more about that species, it's like, yes, yeah, I agree. The trouble with, a lot of nature, it's seasonal. So you learn these things, and then you don't see the species for 10 or 11 months. And then you see it again, it's like, oh, I need a little bit of a reminder. And that's where identifying apps like that come in handy, because they just go, you need a little reminder, here you go, it's this, and you can read up on about it here. So yeah, I'm very impressed with ObsIdentify, frustrated with Seek, quietly impressed with Google Lens, considering it's not a nature app, it's performed really well. But I think now it's time to put all this information together. Let's talk about whether these nature apps are any good and what it's going to be like going forward. So to do that, let's go to my office and give a final summary of the apps. I'll see you up there. So we've come to the end of our nature app kind of adventure, and I've really enjoyed it. And at the start of this video, I asked the question, can these apps compete with a trained naturalist? And I think, having played about with them for almost 2 weeks now, I have to say no, but they're not far off. And in the hands of someone who understands these things, they're an incredibly powerful tool. But if you're a beginner and an app suggests a species, how would you know if it's correct or not? I'm fortunate to have, a number of years of experience in the field of identifying these things. And I can see an identification suggestion and think, yeah, that's correct, or no, it's got it wrong. But if you're new to it, you don't have that experience. So long as you are aware that these things aren't 100% accurate, and that when it suggests something, read up on that species, find out why it suggested that, what's its features, and see if you agree with it. Or if you don't agree with it. And if you don't agree with it, why don't you agree with it? And that's the whole process of learning about taxonomy and species identification in whatever it is, whether it's birds or flowers or fungi or moths. And so long as you're aware of that, these are incredible tools. They're also free, with the exception of Echometer, but the app is free. We're just buying the tool that we need to look at these things. In the same way with a moth trap, there are apps for identifying moths, but you still need a moth trap if you want to get serious about finding moths. What I do find interesting is a lot of beginners, novices, general casual kind of people interested in natural history, they love these apps. But there is a line of kind of very eminent ecologists and very experienced birders and things like that are dead against them, and I can't understand why. A lot of people say they're inaccurate. I meet a lot of ecologists and a lot of bird watchers who are also inaccurate. Years under your belt doesn't necessarily mean you're good at identifying things. I've chased birds that were never what they were claimed to be. from people who've been bird watching for 20 or 30 years because they've got it wrong. And actually, things like that happen. I've been out and thought I was photographing one species of beetle, got home, looked at the pictures and thought, oh, no, it's not that at all. We're human at the end of the day. So expecting these apps to be 100%, a lot of us aren't 100%. The key is to get as close to that 100% as possible. And that's important when using the apps where you can upload the information you find, because a lot of them, they know where you were, they know when it was taken, they know what it's suggesting it is, and if you've corrected it or not. And you can upload that information into databases, and that's problematic unless you're 100% accurate. So don't freely just go, yeah, that looks all right, and just upload it, because someone at the other end who has to deal with that data will be getting very frustrated when you're reporting penguins in the middle of, in the UK, etc., because it's got it wrong. The other thing that people say is, beginners should learn from books, which is valid because there's lots of great resources out there. But let me illustrate one quick point. That's the book you're going to need to identify your birds while you're out and about. That's a good flower book that you're going to need. Don't forget your moth book, but that's only macro moths, not micro moths. You can get one with both, but that's the one I've got. You're going to need your hoverfly book as well, because where you're looking at your plants, you're going to see some interesting hoverflies. Don't forget your dragonfly book whilst you're near some water. Spiders, going to need the spider book if you want to see what all the species in your garden are. And while you're there, identify all the bees as well, because there's the bee book. Mosses, liverworts, etc. You're going to need the bryophyte book. That's quite heavy. And lichens. That's a small sample of some books that, if you're a general naturalist who's going out and being interested in everything, it's what you're going to need to carry. Let's be realistic. You're not going to do that. You can have all this information in your mobile phone that you're carrying with you. And also, each of these books, well, they're ranging from 20 to 40, 50 pounds. And they're only one source. That's one bird book, one flower book. You don't use one source. I've got books behind me, and there's the shelves here that you can't see, covered in books. And if I find something that I want to identify, I will get 3 or 4 books out and see what each of them say. And so you'll see straight away some of them contradict each other. Some of the fungi books behind me, I've got annotated notes from where the authors have got it wrong. So even the books aren't 100% accurate, and yet we're expecting these apps to be 100% accurate as well. It's weird. This is a lot of information you can't carry out in the field. Realistically, as a generalist, if you're only interested in one aspect of natural history, you can always take one field guide and things like that. But the cost as well is, a lot of people don't have hundreds of pounds to kind of spend on books. That's something else to consider. Don't get me wrong, I love having books. They're fantastic resources. I spend many an evening perusing over different species I've found, trying to identify things over a glass of wine. And that's one of the joys of what I do, is kind of the mystery of finding something and going through the process of identifying it. It's a wonderful thing. But yeah, can these apps really compete with a trained naturalist? Not yet. But these apps are only kind of 3, 4, 5 years old. They're at a good state already. Ask me again in another 5 to 10 years, and we could be having a very, very different story. Very different conversation, all about wildlife identification. So I'm looking forward to those 5 or 10 years to see where the technology takes us. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, like and subscribe. And I'd love to know about your comments about using these apps, whether you don't want to use these apps, whether you think they're the devil's work, whether you enjoy using them, and if there's any apps I haven't covered that you'd like to see me cover in a future video, because there's some apps that I want to cover covering fungi and other genres of natural history. So thank you very much for watching. Get downloading, get out, get identifying. Let me know how you get on. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.